watching streaming in a second, but L'chaim Tal Shalom. A big thank you, Rabbi Yaakov, for sponsoring our learning this evening. It is Rosh Chodesh Elul, and we're just getting started. And a big shukach to everybody for coming. The covered Rosh Chodesh and the Elul Nishmas, our holy brothers and sisters that Rahman al-Islam were taken from the Jewish people so brutally that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give a lot of chizuk to their family, to all of their families, to all of Klal Yisrael. Hashem should give a lot of bracha and hatzlacha to all of the chayalim that are fighting to bring everybody home. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give a lot of chizuk to the entirety of the Jewish people to work very, very hard at this point in time to not fall prey to the Yetzaharas of division and divisiveness. It's a very, very big Yetzahara. It's a big Yetzahara, and we'll speak about it in a couple of moments. But before we say L'chaim Yaakov, you got to have L'chaim with us. That's there we go. So a big shukach, thank you to everybody for coming, and L'chaim Tal Shalom Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Shakol Niyeh B'Dvarei. Okay, my dear friends, we spent some time last week discussing how we know what we know, with an understanding. And those who went here, don't worry, we're gonna very briefly summarize a couple of the nakudas, a couple of the points that we made last week, and then we'll take it from there. Throughout the Midrashim and throughout the Gemaras and throughout all of the Ksavim of the Rishonim and the Acharonim, wherever you look, you see that Chazal understood what goes on in Shamayim from what goes on here. Kichol b'Shamayim v'Aretz. So how do you know, for example, what is going on in Shamayim? You know what's going on in Shamayim from what is going on here. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with the language that you see throughout the generations of the Sfarim is a hishtalshelus, is a development of thought, ideas into practice. The best mashal that we can give for that, by the way, and I'm not the first person to make this comment. The first people to make this comment were Rav Hirsch and Rav Kook, separately, differently, and in different ways. But the best mashal that one can give to how HaKadosh Baruch Hu developed the world is what we call today the theory of evolution. Meaning, the theory of evolution states that from one single-celled organism came the entire tree of life. And when Darwin proposed this in Origin of the Species in the mid to late 1800s, the whole Christian world got very upset about this, started screaming and shouting and saying you're anti the Bible and you don't believe in the Torah. And Rav Hirsch was not bothered by it, and Rav Kook was not bothered by it, and they were part of that whole world, that whole milieu, living in that generation, that point in time. And they said, no, Beseda. So everything that Chazal told us, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu developed the world in stages. So now we saw that it's true in science as well. Beseda Shkayach Mazel Tov. Like that didn't bother, like not even one little bit. It's like, go figure. Meaning that which the Balatanya describes in Shar Yichud Ve'emunah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Tacha Oretz Deshe, that the world should sprout vegetation. And from that, Ma'amar Hashem, from those words of Hashem, came all the vegetation in the world. Okay, so now we know that it's true in biology. Now the scientists have figured it out. Like it didn't bother them even a little bit. Like nobody was perturbed by this. People that learned the Sfarim and that understood Torah, like it just didn't worry anybody. It didn't bother them. It was great. The example that we gave last time was in language. We have mashalim, we have parables that we have in the world of language. That if I say the word light, so light in this world means photons, and in the next world, meaning that's in the physical world, but in the emotional world, to feel light means to feel happy. And intellectually, to be enlightened means to understand something. That's light in a intellectual sense. And in a spiritual sense, Or means Torah. Kiner mitzvah Torah or. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu began creating the world, he creates light. Vayomer Elokim Yehi or Vayhi or. So what the or did Hashem create? All of it. But it starts from the top. It starts from the or Ruchani and its slow, sure development into photons is that process. And we pointed out last time that when you consider what reward or punishment a person gets in this world or the next, it is possible for a person to trade that which they have into something that is tangible and enjoyable for them. So it's possible for a person that really has no interest in anything spiritual, no interest in anything that is ruchani, to want to be desirous of something that is good for them, but they don't care about the next world. The next world doesn't interest them. They're not a ruchani person. They are entirely a physical person. They have no spiritual aspirations. So the correct thing for Hashem to do to reward them is to give them what they deserve in the form and formula, in the currency that they can appreciate. The Machshava, for example, people do this with children all the time, is if a kid makes money doing something or another, smart parents will say, I'm going to hold on to that for you. And when you're 18 or 21 or 45 or whatever, then you'll have access to it. Why? Because if you give a 10-year-old $1,000, undoubtedly they are going to squander it on things that are not meaningful. Undoubtedly, because the things that 10-year-olds want are not things that, I mean, for them, that's the whole world. That's the whole world, is whatever the thing is. The, Xbox or, whatever, Pokemon cards, PlayStation, even whatever it is. The signed shirt of whatever chavra that throw a ball, whatever it is, whatever the thing is that people think is chashuv. It's like, ooh, this is important. Whatever that thing. Some adults, I've heard rumors that some adults also think that that's chashuv. I don't know why, but I think I told some of the chavra here once the story that they asked tongue in cheek. It's hard to imagine that he was being serious, but he had a great sense of humor. Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzaddik Rosh Bracha. When they asked Reb Chaim once, they asked him, "Is it mutter to play basketball on Shabbos?" And he said, "Was is das basketball? What's this thing called basketball?" So I explained to him, "This is it's a game where you bounce a ball and you put the ball in the hoop." He said, "What? And you can't put the ball in the hoop before Shabbos?" Right? You can do it beforehand. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? You can do. I mean, obviously, tongue in cheek, right? Yeah, people don't know this, but Reb Chaim had a phenomenal sense of humor. He was like the Gadol Adar, Sar HaTorah. He was hilarious, like underratedly hilarious. He had a minute when people, I think Lipa had made a song out of this, that when people would come and ask him for a bracha and he was in the middle of learning, he would say bua. Bua means bracha v'hatzlacha. So people would come and say, can I have a bracha? He would say bua, right? Base, vav, hey, bua. Bracha v'hatzlacha, because he didn't want to waste time learning. So somebody says to him, Rebbe, I've waited here for an hour. It's not fair. Can I have a longer bracha? So he looks at them and goes, boo. Good. You got a longer bracha. That's okay. You can be a gadol b'Torah and have a sense of humor. In fact, arguably, you have to have a sense of humor to be a gadol b'Torah, but that's another question. Okay, so sometimes you have a guy that he doesn't care about ruchani things. He cares about gashmi things. He cares about physical things. And because about physical things, so where should HaKadosh Baruch Hu give it to him? Where are you going to give a child a gift? If you're going to say to a kid, "Thank you so much for this amazing thing that you did. Here's $1,000 that you'll get in 10 years' time." He's going to look at you and go, "That's not what I want. That's not what I want. I want something that I can appreciate, that I can enjoy now." Smart parents will say, "Okay, maybe I'll give you a candy now, and I'll save what you really care about, what you're going to care about for later." That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises us there's certain things that you can enjoy in this world, but the majority of it, the ikar, the primary piece of it, belongs to you in the next world. But then you have people that mamish don't care. don't care at all about the next world. They get everything here. That's called Rishayim. People that don't live in a spiritual world at all. They are physical people. They care about physical things, and they care about nothing else. So the kind thing for Hashem to do is to give them all of the reward, everything that they earn. They did a nice thing. Good, you get it in this world. You get it here. Because you're not going to care about what happens next. Those are the discussions that we had last time. The same is true, and you'll see this in all of the Sfarim, in the world of Torah. That there is Torah that is in this world, and Torah that is in every step of all worlds. And we'll explain that in a moment. And specific to Elul is an understanding that the same thing is true of an individual. The same thing is true about a person. But to do this, we'll give you a mashal. It's a shtickle meme, I think. But it's a mashal. If you go to college, which arguably you shouldn't do, maybe. Certainly not an Ivy League college, that's it's dangerous. It's dangerous for Jews in general, and it's dangerous for your neshama throughout the ages. But l'chaim to that. But imagine a whole bunch of people that majored in a whole bunch of different things sitting down. You have somebody that says, I'm majoring in sociology. So aside from the fact that Nebuch is never going to make a parnasa, so what? But I'm saying, but sociology, bichlal, sociology. Nobody's ever gotten this. Nobody's ever gotten a job as a sociologist. You know what I'm saying? That's what do you do? I'm a sociologist. That's right. Yeah. Okay. So no, those you have such individuals. I had a Talmud. I think this was probably 8 or 9 years ago. He told me he was very excited. He got into NYU. This was a few years ago. He got into NYU, and I said to him, "What are you planning on studying?" So he told me that he was majoring in social studies. So I said to him, I think NYU cost $40,000 a semester at that point. So I said to him, for $40,000 times 8, because that's the minimum amount of semesters that you're going to be spending on campus there. I said to him, if you get a piece of paper at the end of it with a degree that ends in the word studies, you'll never ever make your money back. You'll never be able to. If the degree ends, Mel, if you major, but just understand that. So he looked at me, he goes, Rebbe, even if it's Jewish studies, I said, especially if it's Jewish studies. Trust me. That's not, you don't make your money from Jewish studies or social. So you have a sociologist, and he's very excited about studying sociology. So he's sitting next to a guy in the library, at the cafeteria, whatever it is. It's a psychology major. He says to him, yeah, sociology. Sociology is just applied psychology. Good. It's just applied psychology. And then you have the guy sitting next to him. He goes, psychology. Psychology is just applied biology. It's just what's going on in your brain. And the guy next to him he says, biology is just applied chemistry. It's just applied chemistry. It's all these chemicals. And the guy next to him is studying physics. He goes, yeah, but biology is just applied physics. And the guy next to him, all the way down the table, he goes, yeah, but physics is just applied mathematics. And then all the way on the other side of the library is a guy that goes, yeah, but mathematics is just applied philosophy. And it's true. In a very deep way, it's true. Now, obviously not the way that anything is taught today. But I think if you open up the Rambam, if we learned Mada the way the Rambam learned Mada, like Torah Mada, but the way that the Rambam learned science was that. The Rambam learned like the whole thing. Like everything connects to everything. There's no such thing as a division between different fields of study. I mean, there's different disciplines, and there's different pieces of information. But all Chochmah is all wrapped up and tied together. But the way that we study it, and rightfully so to some extent, is we understand that there's work to do in the world of sociology and psychology and biology and physics and mathematics and philosophy and and all of these things. They can be studied independently, but the relationship between these things is exceedingly important. Meaning, if you're going to become well educated, if you're going to chap, and the same thing is true in the world of Torah. Zohar Kodesh writes at the beginning of the Shnei Luchos Habris in the Hagdama, right at the beginning. So he explains that Torah on the surface level is 613 mitzvahs, Tariag mitzvahs, 365 things that you're not supposed to do, and 248 things that you are supposed to do. That's the breakdown. That's what we do, and that's what we don't do. And each of those things have lots and lots and lots of details. But behind that is ultimately what we refer to as Ratzon Hashem, is what does the Rebbeinu Shalom want? What does Hashem want? And the way that my Rabbi Blachman would always say to us, and this is based on the Nefesh HaChaim in Shar Daled, if I'm not mistaken, that all of Torah is ultimately getting you to an appreciation, to an understanding of who is Hashem. Meaning, we can't point to Hashem and say, there he is. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, A is infinite and B is not physical. So how do you get to know him? So the mashal that Rabbi Nachman would say to us is, imagine that a person would learn through all of Nezikin. Seder Nezikin in Shas is big. So halfway through Baba Basra at the moment, there's a lot of halachas. There's a lot of things to talk about. If you would learn through all of that stuff, so you would learn, okay, what does Hashem think about borrowing and lending? What does Hashem think about the laws of property and rights between neighbors? What does Hashem think about damages? If I damage your property, you would damage my property. What does Hashem think about me watching over my property so that it doesn't damage other people's property? What about things that I stole or that I found and then I have to pay back, that I have to return? So in each of these things, there's 1,000 different details. And a person can train themselves to know, what does Hashem think about business between two people? But if you would develop that whole thing out and learn all of the details, so eventually you get a meta-halachic understanding of what does Hashem think about interpersonal relationships? Because that's what Nezikin is about. It's hard to download that picture, that vision of what Hashem thinks about interpersonal relationships. How do you translate a vision into something that a person can appreciate and is actionable? It's very hard. How do you translate that culture? But if you understand all of the details and you practice all of the details and you learn through all of the details and you break your head over, should it go this way, should it go that way? Ultimately, what you're training yourself to do is to appreciate, what does Hashem want from these things? And if you would do that for Nizikin, you'd understand what Hashem thinks about interpersonal relationships. And if you would do that with Moed, for example, you would learn all about Shabbos and Eruv and Rosh Hashanah and Yuma and Sukkah and Megillah and Katan and Chagiga. Right? You go through everything and you say, what does Hashem want me to think about on Pesach and Shavuos and Sukkot? And what does he want me to think about on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? What does Hashem want me to think about during Elul? What is all of that? Ultimately, Moed means an appointed time, a season. You don't understand what Hashem thinks about time. And if you do that with all of Seder Nashim, you'll gain an appreciation of what Hashem thinks about family dynamics should be. What are the responsibilities from husband to wife and wife to husband? They're dry legal terms, sure. What's the legalities of the responsibilities that a husband has to his wife? Of course, the details, but above those details are the big picture thing. So you have the Torah mitzvahs, 630 mitzvahs with all of their details. And that's open up a legal code and you'll find what to do. But ultimately what that means is Hashem is saying something. And that is called the neshama of the Torah. Nishmas HaTorah. Is that picture, that vision. Very, very hard to give over that vision. A person has to work very hard at it. To appreciate what that vision is. Anybody around this table, and many, that are Balei Tshuva, that didn't grow up religious, that converted, that are family members that converted. The hardest part is not the details. The details are things that, like monkey say, monkey do. You see somebody do something, you do that thing. That's not so hard. It's technical. But you speak to people. I was having a conversation with, I won't mention names, but an individual that has been an educator for a long time, Jewish educator, very brilliant person, grew up not religious and got closer to Yiddishkeit a little bit later on in their early 20s. That still sometimes feels like they don't have the whole picture. It's like people harken back to things that they grew up with, and they didn't grow up with that. Like the whole picture thing is hard. That thing is like, how do you gain that? That nishmas HaTorah, that phraseology nishmas HaTorah, you see in Sfasamis, and you see in the Vilna Gaon, you see in the Nefesh HaChaim, originally you see nishmas HaDeiraisa in the Zohar. This idea of the soul of the Torah, how do you give that? Or what Chazal say, and Gemara says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah. The word was Anochi, Hashem Elokecha. Anochi is a acronym for Ana Nafshi Ksavas Yehavis. I wrote down my soul and gave it to you. Meaning, what Hashem gave to us in the Torah is His neshama, so to speak. Or maybe not just so to speak, and we'll discuss that in a moment. Means that in Torah there are also stages. It's possible to learn Torah that is on one level, which is just open up the Shulchan Aruch. What does the Shulchan Aruch say? And then it is possible to learn Torah in higher and higher and higher madrigas, higher and higher and higher levels. Rav Chaim Vital writes about his Rebbe, the Ari HaKadosh, that the way that the Arizal would learn was he would give shir, and in every sugya, he would say over 7 different mahalchim, 7 different ways of learning the sugya in pshat, meaning pshat of Rashi, and pshat of Rabbeinu Tam, and pshat of the Rambam, and 7 different versions of the sugya, according to different shittas of the Rishonim. And then he would read through the whole sugya again, quickly, and then he would say, Al Derech HaKabbalah. And then he would say on the level of the secrets of the Torah. That's how the Arizal would give shirim in Gemara. Because you have levels in everything. The Vilna Gaon said that the Arizal revealed to us the secrets of the Zohar HaKadosh, but only Mashiach Tzidkenu will reveal all of the secrets in the Shas, in the Gemara. Meaning in the Gemara, in the halachas of Abaye V'Rava, are greater secrets than in the Zohar HaKadosh. And this isn't just Blumenthal saying it. This is the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe asked the question. He says, what did Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai do in the cave for 13 years? What did he do? He was learning, right? He was learning in the cave for 13 years. So he says, don't think that he was learning Zohar, that he was writing the Zohar in those 13 years. He says that he would have finished in a month. He says that's chick-chack, that's quick. What was he doing? Mishnayos. That's what he was doing. They sat for 13 years and they went through Mishnayos, learning all of Torah Shebichsav and all of Torah Shebal Peh, all of the written Torah and all of the oral Torah, according to all of their secrets. That's what they were doing. Meaning the secrets within halacha. What does it mean, the secrets? It means all of the levels of Torah, which ultimately is getting to know Hashem on a deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper level. Which means not just in the world of action, which is halacha l'maisa, but also in the world of emotions. Like Chazal tell us, Rachmana liba bai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants your heart. That means He doesn't just want your actions, and it definitely doesn't mean that He only wants your heart. I'm a Jew at heart, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Rabbi. I'm a Jew at heart. Yes, you are a Jew at heart. That's good. That's true. But you also need to keep mitzvahs because Hashem doesn't only want your heart. He wants you to do things. But then there's also intellectual levels and emotional levels and spiritual levels that are infinite within our understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now we should talk about us. Because you might be familiar with the fact that we have a body and a soul. We're looking for the cookies. L'chaim. We have a body and we have a soul. How do you say soul in Hebrew? Neshama. Anything else? Nefesh. Anything else? Ruach. What else? Chaya and Yechida, right? Naran Chai, right? Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. What does that mean? What?
5 levels of soul.
5 levels of soul. Where are they?
Yes.
No, where are they?
Different levels. Yes.
Different levels of the world. Different spheres. Where are these things? And why do we have all of these words for that? In English, it's easy. Soul. However, you need to understand something very, very important. You do not have 5 levels of soul. You do not have 5 souls. Nobody does. This isn't Harry Potter where you can split up your soul. We don't have such things. But we have 5 different words that describe the same thing. And in order to understand that, we need to understand what we're talking about here. So we'll borrow some terminology that you see extensively in the Maharal. The Maharal speaks about throughout all of the Sfarim of the Maharal. And those of you that are familiar a little bit with philosophy from Plato will be familiar with these ideas. There's something called Chomer and something called Tzura. What is Chomer and what is Tzura? So Chomer literally means material, Tzura means form. In Plato's philosophy, what that means, very simply stated, is that this is a table. This table is a table, but that means it's one of an infinite amount of tables that in theory could exist. But this table is a representation of the idea of table. Meaning every table in the world is a table. It's not the same table, but there's an idea called table. If all the tables in the world would be destroyed, there wouldn't be any more tables. The idea of tables would still exist. You can make a table. It happens to be an interesting question, what exactly the definition of a table is. It's not so pashut. It's not so pashut. Not so simple to define. Should we do this? What's the definition of a table? It's hard. What's it? Define a table.
A surface that's at seating level that you can put things on top of and sit around.
Okay.
It could be a desk, though, right? Flat surface. It's
Flat
large
surface.
enough to accompany multiple people. Desks are typically one person.
So the tray table in the airplane is not a table.
Oh, more a tray. That's a
Right?
tray table.
Tray table. It's not a table.
It's
not
a
a table.
personal table.
A personal table, right?
That's it's a technical
Fold-up table. What?
Technically, a desk is a table.
It's a table, right? Desk is a table. Yeah, I'm saying table. A table is not defined by the amount of legs that it has, because
Use.
right, you could hang something from the ceiling and have it at as a table. I mean, it's hard exactly to define what a table. It's a good thought experiment for another time, right? You can figure out like what exactly the something that's a table is. It's not so simple, but what's pshat is that a table at the end of the day is a representation of the idea of a table, and the same thing is true of a chair, and of a computer, and of a cup, and a glass, and whatever. All of these things are representations of something. Chomer is the thing itself. Surah is the abstract idea of it. Is the table distinct from the abstract idea of a table?
Yes.
I mean, yes and no. In the sense that it exists and everybody sees it and says this is a table. It is a representation of the thing called table. Meaning, in this is the idea called table and tablecloth and book, right? Meaning all of this is, could you destroy the table? Yes. Could you destroy the idea of table?
No.
A lot harder, right? A lot harder to destroy the idea of a table. That's, in Hebrew we call that mufshat. It is abstract. But as it stands right now, this table exists. It is both a table and a representation of the idea of a table. That is the physical world and the abstract world. What we defined last week as Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. Shamayim means the abstract world, the non-physical world. Aretz, the physical world. But the abstract world is very big. Very, very big. And to that end, every stage of this abstract non-physical world has levels. And what we mean by levels is that which is tangible at one level is abstract at a level above. And that is the relationship between a guf and a neshama. And I'll give you a few examples. But in order to do that, we're going to ground this because we don't want to be floating too high in the air. We have to say things that are halacha. This is the Tur, halacha l'maisa, hilchas tefillah. If you open up the Tur, this is in Shulchan Aruch. Tur Shulchan Aruch, Siman Tzadiches, chapter 98 in the Tur. The Tur is talking about the halachas of davening. There's a deep avodah this time of year, Elul time, to work on our davening, because we're going to be doing a lot of davening in the next 40 days. Says the Torah as follows. Machshava ketzad. What are you supposed to think about when you're davening? Meaning, what's supposed to be going on in your head? We know what you do with the words. You say the words, right? But what goes on in your head when you're davening? He said, the Tanya. When you are davening, you have to direct your heart. What does that mean? The pasuk says, "Tachin libam takshiv aznecha." Prepare your heart, and then Hashem his ears will hear. Right? That at the very basic minimum, you should know what the words say. Know what the words that are coming out of your mouth. Know what they say. The halacha is, the Matei Ephraim points out, as you get closer to Rosh Hashanah, is that you should go through the Machshava, like read it, so that it's not like you shut up in shul and you go, huh? You should go through the Machshava. You should know what it says there. You should know, these are the pieces of the Machshava. This is what we are going to say. This is what we're not going to say. I think the minhag of our community is anytime that the Art Scroll Machshava says some communities omit, we omit. And anytime the Machshava says some communities say, we don't say. Right? And that's okay. No, that's okay. Rosh always points out that I've asked him about these things before. He said to me that Tanaim and Amoraim said far fewer words than we do. They didn't daven as many words. So in some areas, there was a lot of extent to do a lot more, but a lot less. But practically speaking, but we do, right? But every community has their shtick. Every community has their shtick of what they said. They asked. Who is this? Say what? We don't say yes. In many communities, it's still say yes. I mean, not many. There's still a few communities. I think Braya still says yes. But other than that, I don't know. There's a lot of Itchiks, even in Maimah, they still say yes. Look at that. That's wow. So they asked. I think it was the Pnei Menachem, the Ger Rebbe. So they asked the Pnei Menachem, how come you have all of these piyutim that are in the Machshava that like we don't say anymore, or we never said, and just in the Machshava. Why can't you just take out all the things? It'll be. So he said, what? And steal the joy from a Jew of skipping pages on Yantav? He says that's the greatest joy in the world when they say continue on page. You're like, that's in 40 pages. Amazing, right? It's you have to what?
It's an Elul bit.
Right. By the way, it's a Panei Menachem before it was Elul Liblitz. He was Machafin. So we'll send to Eli that Baruch Shekivanta. That says the Torah, you have to know what the words are. Read it beforehand. Read it beforehand. It says, Shemotzi b'tzvasa, the words that you're going to come out of your mouth. It says, V'yachshav ki'ilu shchina kenegda. You should think that Hashem's presence is across from you, that you are facing the Ribbon Shalom. Shenema, like the pasuk says, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid, that I should place Hashem in front of me always. V'yar hakavana v'yasir kol hamachshavos ha-tardos osai, and you should awaken your focus and distance all of the thoughts that are bothersome to you until your thoughts are clear, crystal clear in your mind during davening. This is very hard to do. This takes a lot of practice. A lot of practice. This is, in order to do this, by the way, it is absolutely obvious and clear that all of the Kadmanim, from the days of forever, practiced meditational practices. Because it is impossible to clear your mind to the extent that you're going to be able to focus your thoughts and not get distracted without training your mind. It's very clear that this was a part and parcel of Yiddishkeit forever. And those of you that are thinking, yeah, but like, I'm a Rambamist, and he was not into all of these mystical practices, you should know that in the Sefer HaMaspik LaOvdei Hashem of Rabbi Avram ben Aramam, the Rambam had a son by the name of Avram, who wrote a book called Sefer HaMaspik LaOvdei Hashem, the guidebook for servants of Hashem. In the 13th chapter there, he describes the meditational practices of his father, meaning how the Rambam practiced meditation. Like, he's got it there. And the importance of it. Discusses it explicitly. I mean, the Rambam doesn't paskin how to do it, because halacha is that you should focus your mind. How to do that? So his son wrote it. Good. It says, V'yachshav ki ilu hayem medaber lifnei melech basav adam. If a person was standing in front of a king of flesh and blood, this is what you should imagine. Shahayom kana l'machava kever, that this king of flesh and blood is today live and well, and tomorrow is going to be buried, meaning he's mortal. He would prepare his speech and direct his thoughts appropriately. You should prepare yourself that you wouldn't mess up. But how much more so in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in front of Hashem? You should be well prepared to be able to say what you need to say. Say what you have to say in front of Hashem. You should be well prepared. That you have to be very, very focused. You have to have attention. Stand at attention. What are you thinking? And here's the key words. Listen very carefully. It says, Ki lefanav hamachshava kedibur. Because before Hashem, thoughts are as speech. That's a strange line. What does that mean? What does that mean? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows your thoughts, but what does that mean that it's like speech? Means that when I speak to you, that is, in the physical world, how we communicate. But I'm not my speech, and you are not your speech. Above the level of speech is the level of thought. And our thoughts, we can't communicate to each other without speech. Meaning thoughts cannot be contained in this world as thoughts. They need to be represented in words. But the truth is, those words are a representation of thoughts. This is a hishtalshelus. It is a development. It is an evolution. I thought something and then I said that thing.
Meaning the thought is the abstract.
Correct.
But is the thought the judged? I'm just curious.
So what?
Is thought judged in that regard? If you don't say it.
Yes and no. Meaning, so Hashem does connect your thoughts to your actions, and that's true in halacha. But when says the Torah, what you're supposed to think about when you're standing in front of Hashem is that what you are thinking as you communicate with Hashem is exactly as if you were communicating with somebody else in words.
So why are you davening using your mouth? Why not just sit there and focus and...
Good. So the Rambam asked that question himself. The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim writes.
I disagree with what you said.
So I'll explain in a second. The Rambam writes in Moreh Nevuchim that the highest level of communicating with Hashem should be abstract completely without words. He says, and that is the level of the prophets, that they would meditate and communicate with Hashem without speech at all. It would all be abstract. He says, we can't do that because for us, if we don't say things, we don't feel like it's real enough. So we have to say it in order for, he says, but true that's a downgrade of the ideal. Now that's the Rambam Shita. The Ramban Shita, right.
But hang on, Moshe Rabbeinu, his Nebuah was said to be higher because he was pale, fair. He spoke to Hashem, he heard Hashem speaking.
Correct.
As opposed to a non-verbal.
But no, how did he hear him speak? In his ears?
I don't know.
No.
Why not?
Meaning he wasn't hearing it in his ears. It wasn't physical hearing.
Why not?
Meaning because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was not speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu in a physical hearing sense.
Because his pale, fair.
That's a mashal. Like the same way that the Torah says Hashem doesn't have a face. Hashem doesn't have a hand. Right? Meaning not in a physical sense.
So what was the difference then between Moshe Rabbeinu and the other prophets?
A lot. We'll get there.
No, but in terms of how you communicate, even if it's one-way communication.
So we'll get there. Not yet. It's a great question. But practically speaking, the communication that a person has with HaKadosh Baruch Hu could be on the level of Machshava. It could be on the level of Machshava. And I'll give you two other examples in a moment. Or at least we'll give one example and then we'll get Jason's question. 100%. In a korban, you have to have the right Machshava, and the wrong Machshava, the wrong thought will mess up the korban. Could be puzzle the korban, but I'll give you a much more tangible example in the halachas of donations. So if I want to give you something, those that are learning a little bit, if I want to make a kinyan, if I want to acquire something or give something to somebody else, how do you acquire something? You have to have a kinyan, right? What's a kinyan? What do you need to do in order to you lift the thing up or hand it over? Or in property, you have to have nagad or parrots, right? You have to lock the property, right? Build a fence around the property or break a wall between property. I mean, you have to do an action in order to acquire that property. If I want to acquire this book, so I acquire it through lifting it, through pulling it, through bringing it into my reshus. There's an activity. There's if I bring it into my home, so that's an activity that acquires it.
But that may be because at our level of comprehension, it requires a physical action to make it real.
So what's the halacha if you want to give something to the Beis Hamikdash? So the Gemara says, Amirasa legvaya kemisirasa lehedyatami, which means when I say I'm giving something to the Beis Hamikdash, that declaration by itself makes it belong to the Beis Hamikdash. Meaning, in order for me to do business between me and you.
But it's not a thought.
So that which is required as an action between a person.
You said something. It's an action.
No, saying is not an action.
But
If I say this book belongs to you, it doesn't yet. No, so hold on a second. What requires an action between me and you only requires speech for the Beit HaMikdash. It's more abstract.
But it's still an action.
Nachon, it's still an action, but it's a high, meaning it's more refined, it's more abstract. You understand? Meaning, for me to, if I want to give you a cow, I can, in order for the cow to belong to you, right, I need to give it to you. I need to physically bring it to you. But if I want to declare something as hekdesh to belong to the Beis Hamikdash, I can say, this is hekdesh, and then it is. And that has two halachas. Halacha number one is it now has Kiddusha. Now it's Chodesh. I cannot do other things with it. But the other piece of it is that it belongs to the corporation called Beis Hamikdash. Beis Hamikdash Incorporated. It is a company. The Beis Hamikdash is a halachic legal person.
It goes to the funds.
It belongs to the Beis Hamikdash. And if a person were to use it inappropriately, not only have they violated its status as hektish, they've also stolen from the Beis Hamikdash, and that's called me'ilah.
But it's not a thought.
No, but it's a higher. Meaning, the point is that when you deal with something that has more kedusha, you're dealing with something that's more abstract. So that which requires an action requires, for the Beis Hamikdash, speech, and that which requires speech between two people, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, requires thought. Because the Balatani points this out in a number of places. A person has livushim, has garments, meaning not just physical garments, but there are things that I wrap myself up in. My thoughts, my speech, and my actions. Machshava, dibur, maseh. I'll give you the following example. I can do something and then say, "Oi, I regret that. That wasn't me." Meaning, I did it, but that wasn't me. And I'm saying, when you say, "It wasn't me," you can apologize, usually to your spouse. "I'm sorry, that wasn't me." And she says, "No, it really was." Right? Doesn't always work.
You can trick everybody.
Right.
Some people-
Right? But a person could say, I mean, and that's the tshuva that we do for actions. We say, "It wasn't me. It wasn't me." And the same thing is true by speech. A person could say something that's inappropriate, something that's hurtful, something that's upsetting, and then apologize and say, "It's not me. It wasn't me. It was something external to me." It's possible even that a person could do that with thought. You could say, "Hey, you ever have a thought and then you go, oh, that's not a good thought." Right, and you, right? So what's that you that says that thought isn't you? Right. So, I mean, where's that? But that, whatever that thing is then is more abstract than the representation of thought. Meaning
That's your soul, basically.
So it's
Your
Maybe.
soul is generating the soul. The
so
thought.
right. It's your terpnimi. It's more abstract. It's more refined. Yeah.
There is, but is there a place? Thought can affect your actual.
Yes.
I know one place.
Yeah.
When you have relationship.
Correct.
Is
But
there any other exception?
yeah. So the Gemara says that by tzaddikim, once you're gomer bedata, once he's decided on the price of something, he doesn't change it. Meaning, because the abstract thought is already real. Meaning, I've already decided that I'm going to sell it to you for this price. I didn't get a chance to write back to you to say offer accepted. But I've already thought that. And you, in the meantime, you decided to send me a text and say,
That's an exceptional.
tzidkus, right?
Now, speaking of normal,
Right.
like an everyday basis,
Meaning that our
thought can change.
can change the way that the action is. Meaning
The result.
pigul would be the primary example. If a person had the wrong thought, bringing a korban, then the korban is puzzle. You can't use
In
it.
general, if when you're doing a mitzvah,
But-
you have the wrong thought, does that mean in the mitzvah is like on a lower level? Or,
Yes.
You give tzedakah, but
So-
you drink it with like the wrong intent.
So
or just a bad,
you
like a-
have fulfilled the mitzvah of tzedakah, but I'll give you the primary example. And this comes up on the day of the week that is most abstract, that is most Chodesh, is Shabbos. Throughout Masechah Shabbos, the Gemara says that Meleches Machshavas Asher Torah. The Torah forbade you from doing a activity with a particular thought in mind. Meaning, on Shabbos, your thought is what makes that either a malacha or not a malacha. Which means that, and we can't read people's minds, but the way that a person, so in a Beis Din, it's hard to judge these things. But la halacha,
Share every grace. And it
Right.
makes a whole.
right? So you have psik
Depends on your
resha,
thought.
you have psik resha, which is it's going to result in this activity either which way. But sometimes you have, and we're not going to get into all of Hilchos Shabbos now, but sometimes you have things on Shabbos that if you picked up a pen and you wrote something on Shabbos, and you signed a check or whatever the case was on Shabbos, and you knew that it was Shabbos, and you knew that what you were doing was wrong, so that is violating Shabbos on the level of deraisa,
That's crazy.
right? That's violating Shabbos. But if you didn't know that it was Shabbos, right? So that's not intentional. That's b'shogeg. That's a lower level of violation. That's unintentional. Meaning it's exactly the same activity, same action, but your intention makes all the difference. The same thing is true. For example, in the halachas of, and this the Torah describes explicitly, the halachas of murder. V'hu lo soneh lo mitmel shel sham. Somebody kills somebody else, but they did so unintentionally. It's exactly the same action, but their intention makes all the difference. I mean, the intention defines what the action is. The action without the intention,
It's the same today when you kill someone.
correct. But meaning the intention now defines the action. That action is not the same action without the intention. Means that in the world of action, we know what you did. And we can test what you did by having conversation with somebody. So you'll have witnesses that will ask you, do you know what you're doing is wrong? You can, what do you use speech for? Action cannot tell you what's going on in people's minds. Maybe speech can. But even speech, a person can lie to you, can't tell you what's going on in their heads. Means that the more abstract that something is, the more elevated it is, the less simple it is to describe, to define, to deal with. But the more it could, in theory, connect to a higher version of yourself, a deeper version of yourself, a more integral part of yourself. And this is the line that the Torah says here. He says, "Lechaven af machshavasa ki lefanav hamachshava kedibur." To prepare your thoughts, because in front of Hashem, your thoughts are as speech. What does that mean? Your thoughts are as speech. Means that to recognize that in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when you're speaking to Hashem, when you're standing in front of Hashem, there's no such thing as lying to Him. Meaning the words that you say have to match the thoughts that are in your head. Because otherwise,
It doesn't matter.
right,
So,
yeah,
okay, I mean, I'm gonna totally ask, I'm not asking about everybody, I'm asking about myself.
sure.
So why was I always taught that these are the boxes you have to check, these are the actions you have to do, and then also these are the things you have to say, and very little was ever discussed about what you have to think about, what you have to focus on, what you have to meditate on. Because it sounds like what you're saying is that, you know, you can go and you can shake a lulav and you can be thinking about something else and whatever. Or you can really make a bracha and you could be lying about it, but your thought cannot. Or the Torah learning, but I'm like a higher level and it's truth, but we aren't taught to go that direction. We're taught to go the direction. Wrap it 7 times, put it 3/4 of the way up the door. Because like we're very into the details of the action and not so much into the details of the thought.
So,
And by the way, why would you get scarred for something if your intention wasn't to actually do it?
So-
Right, but I
But
feel
when
like
you
I was
shovel a matzah in someone's mouth, doesn't matter what it feels.
Say what?
When you shovel a matzah in someone's
Yeah.
force feed someone.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
No, no, but you-
So I'll give you the following example.
aware of something.
Judaism's
I
very.
want to give an example.
Yeah, please. Reb Dov, what do you say?
Crazy.
Okay.
It's not about the thought. It's about,
If you're
even
doing,
not
your
about the
beliefs
action.
are different.
You said the table is a table. There's chomer and there's two. So I'm thinking about all the time. when you
Your
go,
intent-
what
Your
do I
intent
have?
in relation.
Yeah.
to education is a big difference.
So when they kill us, they don't care about your thought.
נכון?
They just care about one thing. You're Jewish or not Jewish. Not even if you're Jewish or not Jewish.
Right.
So there's a lot of Jews who were secular, and one day they said there was a few years ago there was a sports איך אומרים? שדר טלוויזיה.
Yeah.
And no one knew, but he was very, very religious. He became religious one day. He said, one day, no, sport, no.
Right.
And he said one day, if Chas v'Shalom I'm going to die in an attack, I want to die not only just, I was killed because I was Jewish, but I practiced as a Jew.
Right. I hear it. And there is a lot to be
The
said.
other way around.
There's a lot to be said, and this is important to understand. Some of the Sfarim point out that were it to be that a person spent all of Leil HaSeder being mechavein, having all the amazing intentions of eating matzah, but they didn't actually eat the matzah. Didn't happen.
Nothing happened.
But
You did the Maaseh Mitzvah.
you didn't do it.
But you shovel it in, you don't even think about it, and you're good.
You did it. So
Well, we live in a physical world.
So,
That's how we
it's
perform.
it's both, but I'll explain what I mean by it's both. If you give tzedakah to somebody with the wrong intentions, did you give tzedakah?
Yeah.
Yes.
They tell you they're showing. That's
But if you did it with
But he has to be a person who can accept.
fine. I'm saying
How is it not on an individual basis?
everything's on an individual
I
basis.
mean, like, these are blanket statements.
No. What I'm saying is when you do a good
I mean,
action.
I understand what your point is. I get your question. I understand the blanket. I understand that if you give tzedakah with the wrong intention, then maybe you still gave tzedakah. But
You
like-
definitely still gave
But
tzedakah.
that doesn't mean that your intent 20 minutes beforehand giving tzedakah wasn't already there.
Oh no, but I'm saying
Or even 5 years beforehand.
fine. But I'm saying, but if you gave it with the wrong intention, meaning with hate and with I'm annoyed at this guy. Yeah,
But maybe that was in that moment. How do you know 10 years ago?
maybe 100%.
So it's like totally relative.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
Meaning, and every time that you do a mitzvah, you're
my name on the building.
right. I'm saying
And 10
very
years
clearly.
beforehand,
Doesn't matter.
Maybe
Maybe.
you prayed for
Doesn't
it.
matter.
and-
Having specific
Maybe.
mitzvah doesn't require intention.
meaning everything that you do, if you do it with intention, that upgrades it. And the same is true, and this is the key point here, in every piece of every relationship, is there's a very big difference to go out for anniversary dinner with your spouse. So you yotze, you check the box. We went out for dinner. But the thoughts and intentions that you have, right? Picking the restaurant that they like, and figuring out get it. So the intention that you have makes an enormous difference. And certainly while you're on the date, if you're staring at your phone, like oy vavoy. Oy vavoy. But if you bichlal didn't even go out, you forgot the anniversary. So that's the worst. I'm saying, let her yell at you for being on the phone. You know what I'm saying? But if you forgot it, if you didn't do it at all, yeah. Now you're dead in the water. There's nothing to talk about.
you don't get yelled at.
Right. Much worse. Much worse. Much worse to not. That's so. We said this about parenting, that half of it is just about showing up. When your kid has a little league baseball game, for them it's the most important thing in the world. Show up. Give them the attention. Every kid knows when you're giving them attention, when you're not giving them attention. Every kid knows. So being there, being present, doing it, that's the Maisa. If you didn't do the Maisa, the kid doesn't care about your Machshavas. I'm sorry, Bubala, I really wanted to come, and they don't care. They don't care because you didn't do it. If you did it, Now we can talk about your intentions. And your intentions could be higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. But the action needs to take place. If you didn't do the action, then so it's true that in the world of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you intended to do a mitzvah and then something came up and it was impossible for you to do it, but you really prepared for it and you really intended to do it. So then HaKadosh Baruch Hu can be mitzdaref l'maisa, meaning he'll give you credit for that. You'll get schar for that. You'll get reward for those positive intentions. You still didn't do it. Meaning you still, at the end of the day, you didn't do that thing. All the best intentions in the world to give tzedakah are not the same thing as giving tzedakah.
Badly.
Right.
Badly.
Yeah, bad. In the worst.
Bad intention.
Correct.
Still better
Than not
than not giving it with the best.
with the best intention, right? I had all the intention in the world to give you, but I didn't.
It's interesting.
Right?
That's why they taught you to all the
Can't think
So,
about it.
meaning, so
Do
at
it,
the
wrap it on your arm,
training,
it's done.
at least certainly for little children, is to understand, just do the things that are positive, right?
Don't you need to have like understanding of doing a mitzvah to fill in water, to fill in Quran, to really fulfill the mitzvah, to fill in?
So yes and no. We paskin on a level of deraisa for biblical mitzvahs. Mitzvahs ain't tzrichim kavana. You don't need intention of doing the mitzvah. You just need intention that you are doing the action.
That's how I was.
Lo lishma, bo lishma.
Right. Meaning you need to know that you're putting on tefillin. That's all that you need.
You know, I'm completely spaced out.
Correct. You need to know that you're putting on
But
tefillin.
that's-
Correct.
Think about it.
So that's a bottom basement level of doing the mitzvah, but it's doing it. You're doing it. I'll tell you the secret here, and this is very important to know. The story of your life is the story of the actions that you performed. That's the whole story. The whole story is the things that you did.
That you did or you thought?
That you did.
Or didn't.
Right, well, did it. I'm saying most of us, and this is important to understand, most of us live in a world of thought far more than a world of action. But thought only counts if you do actions. I'm saying the thought counts. It's the thought that counts if you did the thing. But if you all that you do, imagine somebody that I've spoken to Chavra in our kehillah. He sat down with me and said, I have a really great idea for a business. And I want to schmooze out. I want to schmooze out with you with this idea that I have for this business. I said, Beseda, no, how's it going? Excellent. I have this idea and this idea and this idea and this idea. I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this. Correct. Ideas cost $0. Ideas are very cheap. I have amazing ideas. I have a whole business plan. I've thought this whole thing out. I've written the whole thing out. Good. How's it going? Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Yeah. Person go through their whole life thinking about great business ideas. Unless you pull the trigger, you do a thing. You didn't do anything. What's the story of your life? They're going to write down what he had a good idea.
And then they see it on Shark Tank. That was my idea.
My idea, right? I knew it.
You had to make a single sales call.
Thought will
Yeah.
elevate your action.
Regardless, is there some kind of continuum where you should track back one step on the action side of things so that you can make space for better intention?
Yes.
In other words, like you gave the perfect example on you. You said Rav Shafter told you, Rosh Shiva Rav Shafter, that he can't say every word of Slichas in the same time as the Shatz does. So he doesn't say every word, but the 2 lines he says, woof, he's got his whole heart and soul in it.
Yeah.
So where do we draw that? We're not Rav Shafter. We don't know where we can leave out some of Slichas to say the first 2 lines better. So how do we?
So we'll go through halachas of that, but I'll tell you the basic kavanah to have for all things. If you look at Sfarim, like fancy Sfarim, elevated, lofty Sfarim, about kavanas hamikvah, the kavanas that you should have when going to the mikvah, the yichudim, the unifications of these letters and those letters and Hashem's name and kutshabrichu and shchinte, right? Kavaldik. Reb Pinchas Karitza writes in the Imre Pinchas, the primary kavana of going to the mikvah, the top kavana of going to the mikvah. I'm going to reveal to you the greatest secret of going to the mikveh, he says. The kavanah to have when you go to the mikveh is Harei ani holech lemikveh. I am going to the mikveh. That is the primary kavanah to have. And if you open up the Yisod B'Shor Shavai, the sefer over there written by Rav Alexander Ziskin, he was the only person to get a haskama, to get his book signed off by the Vilna Gaon and Reb Nachman of Breslov. It's not a small thing. He writes, for every single mitzvah, that the kavanah to have is, I am doing this thing that Hashem wants me to do in order to give nachas ruach to Hashem, in order that Hashem should be proud of me. Hashem should be proud of the things that I do in this world for Him. That's how you begin everything.
That's different from the just the
So, meaning, first is present in what I do. Aleph. I am picking up a little of an esrog. That's what I'm doing. Meaning to be aware of the fact that I'm doing this thing. Like, I've given this example many times before that I heard from Rabbi Eliezer Silva in Rav Aaron Silva. This is great. It was the grandson of Rabbi Eliezer Silva. So Rav Aaron Silva in Kerem Yavne told us that he saw a yid once in Shtivlach in Yerushalayim that was standing with his arm tefillin on and his head tefillin in his hand, wondering if he was taking them off or putting them on. Meaning he couldn't recall if he had just daven shachris or he hadn't daven shachris, right? By the way, don't laugh. We've all been there before. You know the infinite Shema loop? Yes? When you get to Uchtavtam al Nuzot Beitecha Visharecha, and then you go, am I in the first paragraph of Shema, the second paragraph? You know what I'm talking about? Where am I at? And then you like look around to see your people kissing their tits here, right? Yeah, it's you're trying to wonder where am I holding here? Where am I holding? Am I right? Oh, Stock on Friday night is a big and then you scratch, right? Stock, ooh. Mess that one up, right? You know what I'm talking about? Gavaldik.
never happened.
Never, right? Never happened. Never happened. There's just the thought of like, I'm here, I'm present, I'm doing this thing. This is what the Torah is saying. I'm doing this. That is called the neshama of the Maisa. The neshama, the soul of what? Of the activity is what I'm doing. That machshava is the neshama of the Maisa. It's the abstract of the activity. And then, the neshama of the neshama is, and I'm doing this activity because there's a God in the world. And because He wants me to do this. Now, by the way, this is the kavanah of every single Birkas HaMitzvah. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. There is an immanent God in this world, that is present in this world, that is the King, Master of the universe, that has commanded me, meaning that has elevated me with His mitzvahs and commanded me with tivanu, Nishma kol shofar, to listen to this thing that I'm about to listen to called the shofar. That's what you're saying. You're saying, I'm doing an activity, and that activity is because there's a God in the world, which means that there is the Maisa. And then there is the Machshava, the thought. And the Machshava is the neshama of that Maisa. That is abstract. But the thing that is more abstract than that is my recognition that this is a representation of the will of Hashem in the world. And that's the simple meaning of the bracha. Which means that there is a world of action, and that there is a world of thought, and that there is a world of thought that is beyond that thought. And this has many, many, many stages and levels. And this is the ikar. This is the ikar, my dear friends. Because, and we'll finish with this, The Shirei Das writes about these different levels of soul. So Sha'adam b'shashu chai po, when a person is alive here, hu nimtza gam kein be'olamas ha'elyonim, he is also alive in all of the upper worlds. It's not like when you die, your soul goes to Gan Eden, into Olam Haba, whatever those things are. We'll talk about definitions another day. He says you're alive at all times in all of these places. Aleinu lehavin ki lo nachon hu lo'amar kafi sheragilim anu lachshav letzayer lanu she'adam mitmazeg miguf neshama. He says we always think that a person is a body plus a soul. He says that like the soul has descended from on high and is now attached to the body. So after death, she leaves the body, the soul leaves the body, and ascends upwards. She says, in truth, the truth is that a person lives at all times in all worlds. And lives in all worlds at all times in accordance with exactly how they live now. In accordance with the level of each world. At each level of abstraction, the person is existing. You can dissect an action according to sociology, psychology, biology, physics, mathematics, and philosophy. And you can dissect an action in accordance with its mitzvah or avera value, its intention or non-intention value, its relationship value, its spiritual value, meaning at every level, an action has meaning. It says, a person is alive at each level, all the time. It just happens to be that the bottom level, which is also the level of action, what's called in Kabbalah the Olam Asiyah, the world of action, that one is the one that's temporary. That one is the one that is subject to the laws of physics, to the rules of entropy, that things can come and go from this world of action. This table will exist for as long as the table exists. But the concept of table, when does that stop existing? It doesn't. The abstract table always exists. The instance of this table can stop existing. But table always exists. My dear friends, the same is true of you. The instance of you as this world exists for however many years the good Lord gives you. But you, that is the abstract you, that's called the neshama of you, that exists forever. There is an instance of you called physical you. But the abstract you is eternal. And the bottom level of you, the physical part of you, that does stuff in this world. Through the senses of the body. It is confined and defined by the rules of this world. But the main part of who you are, but the main part of you is not physical you. That's the most tangible, but that's because we're physical people. But you, if somebody would say, who is you? You're not your physical body, I hope. It is the difference between being alive or being dead. What's the difference between a body? 1 second before it dies and 1 second after it dies. Physically. Very little. Very little. And yet, everything has changed. Meaning, a person that defines themselves as a physical body, that's all that we are? Chas v'shalom. You are abstract you as well. Abstract you is represented through your body, and you do things. Meaning your body is the kli, is the vessel through which abstract you does things, but it's also you. It's just the bottom of you. You is a kamash lema, is a whole picture. It's a whole thing. It's a whole entity. There's intellectual you and emotional you and spiritual you. It's all but it's not distinct from you. It's you. You are you. You can address different parts of you and you can work on different parts of you. But in every sphere that you exist, there's different aspects of you. It's all the same you. בין ביוסף מציוסי כורחים עם הגוף וענייני החיים שבעולם הזה ובין אחרי המיסה. The same is true before you die and after you die. You is still you. It's just not tied up, wrapped up in the physical part. You don't have the bottom basement level. So the Hainu Shaguf Nifrad Min of Nifsad. The body and soul have separated from each other to the extent that the body is no longer how you would define you. Like if we would say, where is Rashi? Where's Rashi? If you'd say that, Rashi is in a cemetery in Troyes. You'd be like, that's not where Rashi is. Where's Rashi? Rashi is everywhere. Right? It's like, look in Rashi. You mean I have to go to France? Where's Rashi? Where's the Rambam? Where's Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Emes was Saras Emes. Moshe is true. His Torah is true. We don't even know where he's buried. That's not Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu is alive and well with us in everything. Meaning, not the physical Moshe, abstract Moshe. The Torah of Moshe, the teachings of Moshe, the life of Moshe, the living Moshe Rabbeinu that is part and parcel of the Jewish people for all time. That is here. He says, "Omnam gam inyan guf neshama shenimtza pai oser inyan atzmai nimtza gam mitzias adam alamasel yerim." The you that's here is the you that's there. It's the same you. Aval zeh ba'ofen acher legamrei. It just looks different. It is different. It's abstract. Lefi mitzias alamasahim, lefi madregas adam sham. There's a billion more pieces to understand about this. But at the very, very basic level, what we need to understand is that when we talk about different names for the soul, what we are talking about is abstractions of abstractions. Meaning, the thought behind the thought, behind the thought, behind the thought, behind the thought. That at the basic and most fundamental level of all things, the whole world and every person and every single mitzvah and all of wisdom and everything that is, was, or will be is ultimately an expression of the will of Hashem. And each level of abstraction to get to that understanding requires a lot of hard work. To experience that and to understand that. And the higher that we climb gives us a deeper and more profound understanding in everything. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to understand that we are not just physical, that there's more than physical. And beyond that, there's more and more and more for us to achieve. And it requires a lot of avoda, and a lot of musar, and a lot of pnimius, and a lot of action, because the way that you work on yourself is by doing things. But I'll leave you with this thought. Is that the more that a person grows in their neshama, and the neshama of the neshama, and the neshama of the neshama of the neshama of the neshama, the more that we understand that all things are Ratzon Hashem, the more that we understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here with us, holding our hand through everything that we're going through. And the more that we understand that that we are children of the Ribbon Shalom, like the Baal HaTanya explains, that if you understand that you are a child of Hashem, then you understand that every Jew is your brother, every Jew is your sister, and then you begin to love every person as much as you love yourself. You care about each person as much as you care about yourself. Because ultimately, you understand that there's far more that connects us than divides us, and that's not just a statement, it's a reality. That's what we are, it is who we are. That the differences in opinion are like the bottom of the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. It's like looking at a tree and seeing two apples next to each other and be like, those are totally different things. Like, I mean, yes, they are separate apples, but like they're both apples that are on the same branch of the same tree. To look at that and be like, it's like, come on. When you see the oneness that is behind things, when we begin to see the world in those veins, it's a different world. Things start to make a lot more sense. There's a billion more things to say, but that should be enough for tonight. And Hashem, Chodesh Tov Mevarach.
Amen.